Welcome to Creators Anonymous. This is the podcast that reaches out to creative people to get to know them a little bit better and find out what they do for a living and what their creative process is. Today, I'm minus one co-host. He is off with some family, but instead I have Mr. Kc Wayland with us. Kc, thank you for taking the time to be with us today.
Thanks, James. I'm happy to be here.
For people that don't know who you are, can you tell us what you've been working on, or what you have finished and completed, and what you're working on now?
Sure. That's a loaded bill. So my name is Kc Wayland, and I write and direct a show called We're Alive. It's a serialized audio drama. We just recently finished We're Alive Gold Rush, which is the last sort of mini series that we did, and we're working on the next one, which is We're Alive Descendants and We're Alive Scout's Honor, which are the last two iterations in the We're Alive audio series. So yeah, we're working hard in the process of doing more and more audio drama stuff.
So I'm a huge fan of yours. I follow your Twitter, and I do a lot of I see a lot of your behind the scenes. You use a lot of practical effects in your audio. Is that a difficult process?
It can be sometimes, but also at the same time, the practicality of sound is sort of what we're used to in hearing it. So you kind of have to adhere to some of the things that you have to do to get sound to sound like that in a way. Like one of the examples I think that I could explain to people so they have an idea of what you mean is we worldize a sound sometimes, like, say, for instance, a character is talking through a certain helmet, and it's hard to hear what they're saying, but you have to process it in a certain way. So what we'll do is we'll actually put like a full spectrum speaker behind a mask and duct tape all around it, and then re-record it, the sound that comes through the mask. That way we can get the right sound of what it would be like to exactly coming through that helmet, and then can EQ and mix it to make sure that you can hear everything that's coming through against the recorded voice and the mask at the same time. That kind of stuff.
I especially like the video you posted on Twitter where you're like shoving a mic in front of a horse's mouth. That was pretty fun.
Well, I mean, honestly, I went to the stables to get patting of a horse because nothing that I did gave me the pat that you would get from a horse, like that hair, that texture, that depth of tissue that is a horse. You can't get that anywhere else. And I was like, I need that. And like you had so much more character when you're able to actually record specific horses. Because a lot of the times, some of these sound effects packs that you get and some of the recordings that people have done before, it's not the same horse. It's many different horses, and it's always like sometimes not great.
Yeah, being a huge fan, I've listened to all of your all of them, and more than once. And I listened to the original series at least once a year since it came out. Like, I know you just hit 10 million downloads.
Oh, for the series?
Yes.
It's 185 million.
Okay, I was off just by a little bit.
No, it's we've been going since 2009, so 10 years. And Gold Rush itself has hit 5 million itself in the last launch of it.
That is huge. I can only dream about those numbers.
No, it's been awesome. It's been a testament of one of those things where if you build it, they will come. I know some people would don't know or don't believe that could happen, but really, if you create something that is good and you just keep on consistently doing it, people will, attach themselves and keep coming back.
Yeah, you've definitely set the bar for audio dramas. Like, everybody I talk to about an audio drama, they know who We're Alive is and the amount of time and quality you put into it. But going way back to the beginning, back to the story of survival, what really inspired that?
That was, I mean, the pinnacle of the one thing that I think that kind of came from it was the idea of the tower. The idea of, because when I was overseas, there was, I wonder if I could share this photo with you. I have a picture of it right here. Does this send if I drop it in your face? Nope, it does nothing. I want open
Can you
conversation.
put it on
Here we
that
go.
screen right there behind you?
Here we go. Oh no, actually, no. It's ta-da. There. Now I can send it. It wouldn't. There you go. So now I'll just re-describe it.
Oh, that's kind of what I was imagining.
So yeah, so when I was overseas in Iraq, there was a hotel that they used, and they housed storage. Excuse me, they housed soldiers inside of it. And the great thing about it was, I was like, oh, this is an interesting idea. And they would secure the bottom, and then you could house all the soldiers that you want inside of it. And I was like, that is an awesome idea. Until it got rocketed. And because I was like, oh, and then I was like, well, it didn't work very well in the war environment because of that, because the human element. But what about in the zombie world? And I was like, oh, that would be the perfect, like, yeah, soldiers and people who are mental preparists. You always have that, like, what would I do in the zombie apocalypse? That kind of scenario. And that kind of started to stem out from there, from that one tower. So the tower sort of became like a beacon of what the idea spread from there. And then I just developed it more and more, and I wanted to do a live action with it because I really felt that there was no serialized survival story on television that had done anything like this, and there wasn't at the time. When I was first starting to set this up in 2008, 2009 is when we launched. Yeah,
The Walking Dead came out.
The Walking Dead came out like a year after that.
So have you thought about doing any other medias with We're Alive, like comic books or an animated series?
I have, and none of them have really panned out in a meaningful way, or like who's going to pay for this kind of way. Because I mean, that's at the end of the day, that is the question mark is, well, if we want to do any adaptations, they have to be well done, and they have to be paid for, and those are two things. It's like, well, I'd rather not do it than do it wrong, because how many times have you seen people do something in an adaptation and it's just a failure and it just looks bad on them? And I'm like, I'm not gonna do that. I don't want to lend my IP to something that is gonna crash and burn. So it's kind of like, I'll wait until it's ready, until there's a partner or a producing project that will really exemplify it.
Nice. I know. Like, my very first thought when I was listening to the survival story way back in probably 2010, my very first thought is, why isn't he shopping this to YouTube to get an animated series out of this? Like, this would be awesome.
Yeah, and we could do an adaptation of it from the voices, but then it's not exactly like I wrote We're Alive to be made for audio, so I would try to find some reason of why it would be important to do it in an animated series or a live action. And so that's kind of the question is how to do that style and how to do it differently. So I don't know. I've thought about it, but at the same time, it's always the dollars and cents of it. I mean, to do an animated series is very expensive, especially to do it with a degree of good design and everything else. Because, I mean, I like the idea and control of doing one dimension of sound, even though you have so much of it, and I can do anything with sound. I don't have to worry about the visuals, because the visuals are very hard to do for any of these projects. They get costly, and that's one of the reasons why I love doing audio in this way, is because I can cut that line out and do the infinite amount of things with the minimal amount of money, but still having it with character and direction, and like you get to hear the world around you, and I get to give you everything in a presentation.
Yeah, I know the one thing my wife, I got her to listen to it, and she loved it, and she was really excited for Lockdown, and then she was more excited for Gold Rush. But when we were first listening to the survival story, she like would hear the sounds in the show, and then she'd be like driving along, and she'd hear like the zombies scream, and she'd be like, "Is that happening right now?" Like. And listening to it in a car with full surround sound is possibly the best way to listen to it.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's there. people don't understand. I mean, when they listen to it on their little headsets, they tend to miss a lot of what's there. I mean, you don't get the bass typically. You miss a lot of the kind of full spectrum of sound that's there. It really puts you in the location too.
Well, I have a set of a Trex Titanium bone conduction headset, and by far that is the best way to listen to it because
when you have the best of the best, I mean, jeez.
Yeah, I listen to it that way, and I can literally feel the sound in the back of my skull. So,
okay, well that's different. I mean, most people. I mean, I'm on Behringer's right now, and like or Bear Dynamic. What are these? The Bear Dynamic like 990 Pros, and like so these are like really good quality ones, but most people don't listen on good quality headsets. I mean, I hate to say it, but those AirPods, AirBuds, none of them can compare to when you're listening at a full monitor. Yeah. Like, and that's actually something that is really cool about some of the live shows that we've done is when we can play We're Alive in a speaker system that allows it to be felt like you're in the room, and when things crash, and like in Gold Rush when that wall crashes down, you feel it in your chest and you can feel what the characters are feeling, and it's like that's awesome. That's the kind of stuff that I wish and I want people to be able to experience more of in the future, and hopefully, knock on wood, one day I'll kind of be able to have a better control of the experience in which people listen to the show. So that'd be kind of fun.
Yeah, if you ever make it up to Seattle, definitely give me a call. I will be there like within seconds. I'll meet you at the airport. Like, let's do this.
Well, we are hoping. Well, we will be in London, and we're hoping to do a listening session there at the Pod UK festival. So that's for different festivals. We're hoping that maybe. They do have different arenas for podcast festivals. We could hopefully find some place to do like a listening party. That'd be awesome.
I would so be on that. Speaking of We're Alive kind of exploding, when you were all laying this track down, you had the project going, did you ever think We're Alive was going to get as big as it did?
I get this question asked a lot. I still don't see it as big as it should or could be. I see it as a lot more potential behind it, and I'm just seeing like barely the cusp of it. And it's one of those stories that it's a really great story, and I still have a lot more to tell. And the great part about it is not everybody knows the full story yet. It's still waiting to be unveiled. And what happens in, say, Lockdown and Gold Rush doesn't always pay off until some of the later chapters, in Descendants especially, because it's all those especially set up pieces to the next series.
Yeah, I know. I was the guy on Twitter that was like, "Oh my God, I just finished the survival story. What's gonna happen with Nicholas? What's gonna happen to here? Like, oh my God, I need more." I was definitely that guy.
Yeah, and I have been since the story Survival ended in 2014. I've been working on Descendants. The side stories are ways to continually put out more material while I've been developing Descendants. It just takes a long time to get stories advanced. 17 years, really. Or it's going to be 18 years now.
Mostly just letting voices age.
Yeah, well, I mean, that too. Some of the original cast is going to age up, and I won't give any spoilers, but there definitely are cast members that were younger in the cast that are much older now.
Yeah. So. Speaking of the cast, working with them so closely, do you still hang out with a lot of the cast members?
Actually, I work a lot with Elisa Elliott, who is Pegs in the series. She works with me a lot with. She's actually riding Scout's Honor, nice. So she's working with me on that. And let's see, anybody else? Constance, CJ, I've communicated with and hung out with a little bit here and there. It depends. Everyone's so scattered. Some people are in LA. Some people have moved on. It's been over 10 years. So it's, we've all gotten much older. When I first started this, I had many fewer wrinkles and gray hairs. But that's life.
Yeah,
It takes time to make art, and you age as you make it.
yeah. Speaking of which, all of your characters that you writ that were part of the main story, I love how every single one of them, you always gave them a reason to love them and a reason to hate them, but at the end of the day, I don't think you had a single badly written character, and that's something I can't say about a lot of shows.
Oh, thank you. I think some people don't like the flawed characters all the time. I think that's something that I mean, there are some audiences that don't like pegs, but I think that even the reality is you're going to have characters who are going to be different than your view style, and that is the world,
I
and that's how you have to deal.
Yeah, I actually really loved Peg's characters because simply because everybody that I know that doesn't like her is like, oh, I just don't like her because she wouldn't pick up a gun. I'm like, dude, she stuck to her morals in an world-ending event. Like, do you realize how strong that takes a person to be?
Yeah.
Like, Pegs is hands down one of the strongest characters you wrote, and
Oh man, she gets. Oh, I can't. Ooh, there's so much I want to say. So much I want to say about the sentence that I can't. I
uh,
can't. I mean, it's said that she's in it, so that's all I can say. It's just. Oh man, I cannot wait to get started with this.
I am right there with you. I can't wait for you to get started. I can't wait for more things to come out about this. Like, when Real Life came out, I bought all the CDs of it, and like I have like
Nice.
a whole little Real Live collection. Like I love Real Live. Like hands down, it's my favorite podcast. I have it on auto
Aw.
repeat. Like I probably, like I said, I listen to it once a year, and it's coming around to the new year, so I'm gearing up to download it again.
I mean, it's the nice thing about it in some ways is that I enjoy fans that do this, that listen to it all the time, because there's so much detail that I've put into it, to be honest, that no one will pick up everything the first time.
They won't
There's
pick it up the 10th time. I every time I listen to it, I hear something completely new. I'm like, wait, that changes everything.
like your next listen through, go to chapter 10, or when you get there, listen closely in the background, and you can hear the little ones in the beginning, like
Yeah,
when they're very young, like
I
they're
caught
in the
that.
background. Yeah.
I caught that. I totally caught that. I was like, and now it wasn't on my first listen through. It was probably on my third or fourth. But I was like, wait, is that the little ones? Like already? Like how long did he plan those out?
They have time to gestate, time to
Yeah.
grow. That's one of the things of We're Alive, is it takes time for things to evolve, and really that's one of the great things I love about Descendants is I have been given
Oh,
18 years of evolution to put into
ugh.
the story, and that's what the fun is like, what happens after 18 years of the story of survival, that I get to deal with the infected. I get to deal with everybody that's been involved with that. The world has grown and changed. And I mean, we got a little bit of a taste of it through We're Live Frontier, which is like our RPG show. Like
I
that's
was
just the,
just gonna bring that up.
the cusp of Descendants, just like it grazes the top of it, almost in a very literal sense. Because they're all tied together, but it all paints a much bigger picture.
Did you have any hand in Real Life Frontier?
Oh yeah, no, I was the world builder behind it, and Ivan was the game master in front of it. So it was kind of cool. I'd be behind the scenes, and I would coordinate with him and work with some story stuff and kind of develop some of the scenarios that the characters could go into. But also it was contained within a bottle of the Where Life story, meaning that they couldn't break outside the bottle that I contained them in a way. Like they couldn't destroy my world. There's
Yeah,
no
I
way. Yeah.
was I watched every episode the day it released. I was super excited, and I was sitting here just thinking, I was like, is Casey gonna let them have like some big monstrous boss come through? Like, are we gonna see any of the behemoths? Are we gonna see any of the little ones coming out? Something that escaped from Boulder and just went just went east.
Mm-hmm.
I was sitting here like, is there any chance of any of these like making an appearance? And there was a few times I was yelling at the screen during season 1. Definitely like during the dam explosion.
Yeah.
I was like, I know the players had some method, and I was just sitting here going, why aren't you shooting a flaming arrows at the bombs? Like, just, you don't have to be there.
I'm behind the scenes going like, all right, some motherfucker gonna die. Who is it gonna be this time? Like, because that's the thing, the dice determine the outcome of the game.
Yeah.
They make the choices, the dice determine the outcome, and that's what the fun of those games are. But the river runners that you talk about are in Descendants.
Oh, really?
Yes, they are.
Did you get the players for voice acting? If you can't answer, that's fine.
There are no current planned crosses,
Okay.
just because of also Frontier is unfinished, so I can't, like, some of these things I may not dabble with until they've finished out with Frontier, just because, I mean, there are connections. I will say there are connections, but they're ones without the characters. They're world connections.
Okay. Well, no, that's still exciting. Like,
I will say my character is in both worlds.
Nice.
Like, so that's one. And the General and Jet are both in both worlds. Those are shared between them, and same with infected stuff. So. Like,
okay.
there's crosses, and then who knows, once Frontier ends, I might be able to, pull some strings and bring in some of the other voices and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
But it's where one of those you kind of walk the lines because of who controls what,
Well, and there's always dollar signs behind everything, so.
Yep, and you don't want to have a character that is in Frontier that is controlled by the characters and them, and crossing into my story, then all of a sudden I don't have any control and blah blah blah. There's
there's a whole level of difficulty too, because they build these characters in Frontier, and then you're expected to build on those characters without character assassinating them.
Yeah, or changing what's going on in their game or whatever. So it's like, you have to. I gotta play both fields right.
Yeah. Well, you're an amazing author, and I really think you could pull it off. Like, I think you can meet that challenge no problem.
Well, thanks. I mean, I plan to eventually cross that bridge in a creative way, and I've had to make some adjustments to story as world affects things, and I think I've made okay. Made it all.
I think you've done better than okay. I think you've done way better than okay.
Well, thanks.
So on the offhand, since you are a podcast creator, do you have any podcasts that you are a diehard fan of besides your own?
To be quite honest, no. Partly for two reasons. One, I don't have any time. And two, I work so much on spoken word material in post and editing and writing that I can't deal with listening to stuff on my off time. Like, it's so much work that, like, sound is work to me now in some ways, that I have to take a break and do something else.
That's completely understandable. Like, I know a few radio hosts that on the radio they're super loud and they talk a lot, but outside of the radio they're like that silent, I only talk when things matter type of guy.
Mm-hmm.
So I completely understand that fact.
Yeah, it's just you just get tired of it and just do it so much, and then you have to go, nah, back off. And then I have listened to other programs and other people's productions, and I do listen to them for a decent amount of time to see what their style is and what they're doing. And unfortunately, sometimes what ends up happening is I also put on my producer hat, and then I start listening and hear nothing but flaws. Like, if I hear actors starting going off, and I can hear that it's not a genuine performance, and I can feel like these aren't people in the same space. It doesn't feel like they're actually interacting with each other, and then I start to take myself out of the story, and then I don't enjoy it. So it's hard. It's a hard balance, and it's like, especially since I do it so much, that it's like when people go to film school, they don't look at films anymore the same way. They always look at the they always peek behind the curtains and say, all right, let's look at the what are the story structures here? What do they do with this? Oh, that. Sometimes you can get lost and be totally absolved in a film, and it's great, but sometimes you don't.
Yeah, there's one thing that I'm really proud that you did is for an audio podcast, you gave us an ending that could have been just the end, but you left questions open that you could have grown on it if you wanted to, which you have, which I'm so thankful you did. There are a lot of other audio drama podcasts that do the same thing as you, but they never finish. Like, they run out of money, they run out of everything like that. And
or they just don't know how to end. It's so easy to start an idea and don't finish it. It really is.
And that's one thing. One of the reasons I created this podcast is because I want to talk to those people, and hopefully the fans will love who they are, and they'll help them get to those financial goals to help finish their projects. If the fans do want to back you or anything like that, where can they back you?
Well, Patreon has been our place that's been keeping the wheels spinning, honestly. We went through, because we do have an operating space and we do have server costs, and like, we don't have constant productions feeding us all the time. So our Patreon kind of keeps us afloat. And then we do We're Live Archive is sort of like that's our show that's behind the paywall for the fans, and we do the live, and that's sort of been our stem inside of Patreon and the way we've been able to do more there. And we're trying to do more with our Patreon channel. It is just hard to produce, keep up Patreon channels, keep up social media channels, respond to business correspondence, work on new projects, keep up a family, feed a family, make money, sleep.
Yeah. Sleep. That's the hard one.
It's like, it is such a juggle that it's really helpful that fans are understanding about how long it takes content to be made. I mean, there's so many like commentaries directly from me to the fans inside of Gold Rush where it's like, art takes time. That's me directly to people saying, hey, sometimes when you have a higher level of standard for something, you have to really take your time doing it.
There's no point in rushing. If you rush, you make mistakes, and then you put out a crappy product. And your work is like a fine wine. It's aged. It's amazing. You definitely took your time in creating it.
Well, thank you. And like this, we're opening up a couple stock barrels that have been aging for a while with Descendants. Like, I'm not joking. I've been working in We're Alive for Descendants. I was working in Lockdown for Descendants, and I was working in Gold Rush all for Descendants. We get the preview of it inside of Gold Rush at the very beginning with the three, we finally get to meet the three mains, Alex, Vera, and Nicholas. And then that's sort of the start of that world, and now Descendants is going to bridge off of that and it sort of starts with their graduation and goes from there.
Nice. His name escapes me right now, but your narrator,
Michael Swan.
Michael Swan, yes. How did you find that guy? Because he's amazing.
He's a friend of Tammy Klein, who plays Kelly, and that was the original connection in the series. Was him and Tammy Klein, and they've been great friends, and we've had him record our stuff ever since then, and like Descendants, I mean, knock on wood, we'll have him come back and do everything else with that. And yeah, he's been amazing and the perfect fit for what we do. Because I mean, I did the original. There are versions of the original that I did out there somewhere that hopefully have been destroyed.
I have to find those.
We're Alive, a story of survival.
See, that's Part not 1. Bad. You could do this too.
It begins.
Oh.
Part 1 of 3.
Oh, that's chills.
Well, that's like, no, that's not. I don't. I mean, maybe it's different. Thank you, but no for me. because I could not stand hearing it every episode. I was like, fuck no, I cannot get into my own show if I'm the voice in the beginning. And I think that's another reason why I'm not a character on the show, because it would be really freaking hard to do both and do it well.
I understand that. I'm editing my own voice, and all I keep thinking to myself is, do I really sound like that?
And as a writer, I would slant everything towards my character to give myself good lines. Yeah. Like, no matter what you do, there would be some subliminal process of saying, oh, no, I'm going to make this association of me a little bit better.
And it's I actually respect you a lot as a writer that you took yourself out of your own production, because that takes away the selfish aspect and lets you really focus on your characters. And that's one of the key reasons I think all of your characters are awesome.
Well, I will say I do get to play a lot of random people in the background. Like, it's almost like spotting Kc when you listen to this thing of like, so I'm Todd in the beginning that dies, like in episode 2, and like throughout the whole thing you'll hear me. Obviously, I'm the behemoths. I'm every one of them. So and them and also Ink. Ink is also another character that I play.
I never made the association in my head. That's gonna be totally different now.
It's Paul.
Oh, that's awesome.
Because he doesn't speak very much at all in this. I mean, yeah. He's a man of few words in the entire series. And I do a lot of infected because I just I don't care what I look like in front of a microphone, and it's really nice to just like hide behind something like that,
All I know is if you ever do a live show, you should just walk out in a pinstripe suit with like Sharpie tattoos written all over you.
I did that at the finale.
Oh, that's awesome.
There are photos. The video freaking failed. I'm not joking. We have like there are some clips and videos and some like GoPro stuff, but our main camera, the SD card was incompatible. The one we bought the day up for the footage, they put it in, they hit the record button, said incompatible, and they couldn't record it. And the cameraman couldn't fix it, and so they just so we don't have we didn't have our finale recorded on our main camera, which was heartbreaking. Absolutely heartbreaking. But you know what? Shit happens.
Yeah,
not the first time.
That's understandable.
But no, I went out on stage and I had so weirdly enough at the end of We're Alive, the last season, I had stopped shaving my beard until the end of it. So it had gotten down to the center of my chest because I was like just going forever, and I'm like, I am not shaving until we're done because I am getting this fucking thing finished. Because there was a lot. I mean, We're Alive, the original series, I was doing while doing a 40-hour day, 40-hour week job on top of that. And it was tough as all get up. Something I could never do again with kids. I mean, you just can't. But for that moment, being up on stage, and I had so I was up there with the beard for the beginning, and then I went backstage while the finale was playing. I had shaved, showered, and come back. They had makeup me all the way down, had put the tattoos all over my face, and I came out in a suit for the after the show had ended. So I had like transformed from like this disgusting, weird, long bearded guy into Ink.
So you went from Skittles to Ink?
Kind of, in a way.
Yeah. Skittles was definitely, speaking of him, he was definitely one of those characters that I thought was just going to be like a one shot. I never expected him to survive.
Yeah, no, he did, and he disappeared after the story's survival.
Yeah, he left the colony, and that was it.
Well, I mean, when he helped them, he thought Ink was going to come back for him.
Yeah.
Like, he was like, I'm not. The man who looked into his eyes and saw what he saw changed him, and he was never the same after that.
I can definitely agree with that. Like, Skittles was, every time I hear him, I'm like, this guy had to be the hardest character to write because he's just batshit crazy.
He starts to get a little better towards the end. His pieces start to come back together as he's interacted with a couple other people in the world now. Like, but he's still fractured and gone from all of that.
Definitely, like, for some reason, whenever he comes on the screen, Manson pops into my head. I'm like, this guy reminds me of Manson.
I mean, if you were in that same scenario, he just broke. And the crazy thing was, he actually was one of the uniques in the world. So in the We're Alive world, there are uniques. People. Saul. Yep, Saul was one. His mom was one. But his uniqueness was not immunity. His uniqueness was in his smell. They did not perceive him as anything. He was like a neutral. Like, he was like a weird, like, almost like a mask that they just didn't see.
Yeah,
kind of a cloud over himself, and the only person who saw through the cloud was Ink, and that's what scared him the most.
And I think you said, because he was describing them, and he was like the fast ones. Then there were the smart ones where you couldn't.
The super fasties.
Yeah. And then he was like, the behemoths you can hide from, the super fasties you have to run and hide.
They don't see so well.
No. And then the smart ones, he's like, you can't hide from them. Was he talking about Ink, or was there another set that?
Well, Ink and ones that there are ones that could see him in some ways. I mean, if they were smart enough to, like, wait a minute. So there's like a certain level of intelligence that you would get up to that would be able to see him. Randy would probably be one that could see Skittles.
Randy and the lab coat guy from the episode where they found Bert.
Yeah, that one. So that's like an undisclosed tale that we don't really hear about. But essentially what that was a very smart infected that fucking got into a tangle with Bert and got into like a duel of like an infected versus Bert. And this thing was smart enough to like pin him in the bathroom. And Bert just like was just stuck there because there was nothing he could do.
I really hope Bert tells that story in Descendants.
That would be kind of fun. You know what? I'm going to write that down. Because it was something, because you know where it died, was where, and this is probably not disclosed very many places, but Bert's book, it was something we talked about for years, and I had been in development, and a lot of it got wrote, and a lot of it got thrown out. It was the backstory of Bert. And
I really liked Bert as a character, and
oh shit, hold on. 2 seconds, my recorder stopped. Okay, there we go. Go ahead.
My first impression was Bert was like, who's this old grumpy guy? But by the end of the series, I was like, I love Bert, and I love the fact that he made an appearance in Gold Rush too. And right where you fitted him in is when him and her name is escaping me. Frenchie was not there.
Sorry, my mind just went into another corner while you were talking in Descendants to connect this duel into the story at a crucial moment. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
I literally just checked out on you. I'm sorry. After you said that, I really got on a tangent. So 2 seconds here. So, aha. I love it. Okay, sorry. You basically may have inspired something that's going to end up in Descendants. Not joking.
I'm super excited about that. Like, woohoo! when I definitely let my wife listen to this part, she's like, "Really? What did you do?"
No, it's great. It's great. It gives me it gives me a moment. Like, that's what it gave me. It gave me a moment to do something that was fun.
Yeah, connect puzzle pieces.
Yeah, it's weird as I'm like, I've been working on the story for so long, and now that I'm like, the outline is coming in, like, and I was like, oh, it's going to be this amount of chapters. And then all of a sudden it's like, uh-oh. It just keeps getting longer and longer. No one can see my hands, and according to audio,
Yeah.
it's stretching out in the video and extending out longer and longer. But yes, no, that's, yep.
Yeah,
Happens.
like I'm super excited for your next things coming in and everything, and like I'm definitely like watching your Twitter. Like I think you're one of the only people I have notifications set for.
Because I rarely ever tweet, so that's probably why.
Yeah,
No, unless somebody does that, they probably would get lost, and I would get lost in Twitter, and because I'm not verified, and so yeah.
Yeah, I don't even know how to get verified on Twitter. It's okay.
Yeah, it's something that I'm like, one day may happen, one day may not. Who knows? I don't know what the requisites are, but
Speaking of having a super successful podcast, do you ever just get recognized on the street?
never.
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 I guess that's a good and bad thing about an audio medium.
No, I'm also not. I mean, I live in a small town of Orange, and I don't get out much, so maybe that's why. But no, I don't think anybody would really know who I am. If put it like this, if they ever made a show for We're Alive, then it would happen here or there. But no, probably not. That's why I'm not a character. If I was an actor or something like that, those are the people that get recognized.
Yeah.
Sometimes good, sometimes bad.
I don't know. You're kind of an actor. You do all the infected stuff.
No, I do love acting. Like that was something that. So I did a recent audio drama called Lover's Leap that I did with Steve Schneider. And actually, I thought I did really well in that one. I had a really good time because I got to really play a character that was fun and I got to put a little bit more me into it than I normally do. And I directed and acted at the same time. I didn't write it, thankfully. I couldn't have. There's no way I could do all three of those. But then I realized that real big difficulty of directing and acting at the same time, because you can't listen to yourself and act at the same time.
Don't know how people do it.
You can't. Like, I'm trying to be like, did I hit the note that I needed myself to do? I don't know. I just did it. So it's like, that's hard. That was hard. I was like, oh crap.
So you worked on other podcasts. I think I'm not sure about this because I haven't really listened to it, but didn't you do work with the podcast Bronzeville?
Yes. I worked a lot with them. I directed and produced it.
Oh, okay.
And so that was season 1, and season 2 I'm doing the same thing right now. So we're working on that. And matter of fact, I have another meeting about it coming up, and it just keeps on going and going. It's a great project, season 2, and man, it gets good. It gets good, and we're doing a lot of intricate details on this one.
I just recently discovered that because I was like, okay, there's got to be more work that he's done, so I have to look at it. And I found Bronzeville, and I was like, okay, I'm not seeing his name on anything, but why does it keep coming up? So
I mean, if you listen, I'm in the credits.
Well, I haven't listened to it yet, but I threw it in my up next episode, so it's now feeding into my podcast ears. So.
Yeah, no, I can honestly say that I directed Lawrence Fishburne and Lorenz Tate, and I got to direct Tracy Ellis Ross. I have been so fortunate with Bronzeville to work with some of the most talented actors I think I've ever been able to work with, and good gravy, are there some big names attached to that production?
Yeah, the big one that I noticed was Lawrence Fishburne. Like, holy cow.
Yes. As everyone tells me, Morpheus himself, and I have never brought anything like that up. You don't, but it's like, yeah, no, you go into the production house that they have, and it's like all the productions he's been in, and I've seen like most of the films, and it's like, wow, this is crazy.
Did you ever have that starstruck moment like, Lawrence Fishburne?
Let me tell you my first meeting with him, and we'll go from there. Let me grab something to drink real quick, and I'll be right back.
Yep, go for it.
Ooh, wondrous, wondrous good things that you should not be drinking in the morning.
Beer?
Dr. Pepper.
Oh.
Or beer. Beer would probably be the second worst.
I was seriously thinking like I should really crack a beer for this, but my wife was like, "Really? At 10 in the morning?" It's like, why not? It's my day off.
Do you want to crack a beer?
Oh no, I'm perfectly fine.
Okay. I was like, yeah, you can if you want. Okay, so so all right, so my first encounter with him was I went to Bronzeville, and day one he had just come back from shooting Nelson Mandela.
Nice.
And he actually wasn't on the first day of recording at Bronzeville. I think he'd come like maybe day 2 or day 3 because he was coming in. And he like was had come in like traditional like African garb because he had just come from like it was something that he had brought from South Africa, and it was crazy to like I don't know, it was a little bit more intimidating with all that on. And it was cool though because at when I first met him, it was very just like, every day, hey, how's it going? We talked a little bit. He had known a little bit about what I did because they kind of had to sell what I did to his production company before the job. And they knew sort of a little bit what I did, and I actually sent over like some documents to the company to say, hey, this is what audio perspective we're going for, sort of how the sessions go, round robin, interacting on stage, trying to give them an idea of sort of how this is done in a modern era, because in some ways they didn't really know. The style in which that I do it in the studio and the way that I have the engineers set it up and the way it's a little different than everyone does it their own way. And so this was just something a little bit, kind of new.
So I have no idea what Bronzeville is even about. Can you give us a quick snippet of what the whole podcast is about?
Sure. So Bronzeville is 1947. It's a district of Chicago that was segregated intentionally. Blacks were put into their own part of the town. And what they did there was they became their own self-sustaining society. They'd help each other because it was hard for somebody who may have been of colored background to get a bank loan. Or own property or do this or that. But in Bronzeville, because they were black-owned banks, they gave out loans to other people that were, and that was something that was unheard of at that time. So it was kind of like they described it as the Black Metropolis. And there was a whole book that was literally called The Black Metropolis that sort of describes this time. And it was funded by the policy kings, these people who spin the policy wheel, and they it's the old day lottery where you would put a nickel down and your number came up, you could win big. But they were sort of like mobsters. They were good. They put money back into town, but they also kept money for themselves. It was a little bit different. And so that's what Bronzeville's about. It's about these characters in this town, what they're doing. And it's a sort of a balance of the social integration of what's going on in the society at that time in that place, and also the characters in which inhabit the like mobster world at the same time. So it's kind of a weird balance of both.
I'm super excited to listen to this podcast now. But we're breaking about an hour right now, so I think this is a perfect time to cut off.
Sure.
So for everybody that does want to find you on social media or anything, where can they find you?
If they want to find We're Alive, it's at We're Alive on Twitter, or I think it's at Zombie Podcast on Facebook, and at We're Alive Podcast on Instagram. And if people are looking for me, I am on Twitter at WaylandProd. That's WaylandProd, and that's the same on Instagram and Facebook. So I'm the original Wayland Productions. That's been my tag since I was 14 years old. So, and actually when I founded the company when I was 14. So I've been in business. Let me get my calculator out here. I can't believe I have to do the calculator on this, but hey, I'm tired and it's been a long day. I've been in business 23 years, apparently.
Holy cow.
I'm 37.
That's an accomplishment. So making your own production company at 14 years old, I feel like they're going to be doing a documentary on you one day like they did with Steve Jobs.
Oh, I got some video, man. It's weird to see myself back then, like in front of a camera introducing my action figures to the Fantastic Four. Like it was funny. I was doing Infinity Wars before Infinity Wars was the thing, man. Like legitimately, I had all my action figures. I did stop motion animation stuff, like Legos. I did my first one I did in like 95 was the Aztecs, and I had like stop motion animation of literally black painted Legos. Well, excuse me, they were more Aztec painted colors, but like they didn't make any colored Legos besides yellow back then. But I did sacrifices and have heads roll down the temple that I made and stuff like that. And the sun god was like a Lego smiley face at the top of the temple and shit. It was really funny. But it was my first thing I did like as a project for animation, because I was like, wait a minute. Yeah, I could do a report, or I could do a video.
Yeah, that sounds A+.
Done right there. And really everybody loved it, and I was like, well, this actually kind of sucked. I could do better stuff than this. And so that's the kind of
You should do it like an age progression video of like all of your work, starting with that stuff.
I got some crazy, because I got heavy into animation. Like I did really so another one for you if you want to look up is called Pet Shop Blues. If you look it up on YouTube, I wonder if it's a direct search. If you do a search for it, if it comes up, I'm actually on YouTube right now. Pet Shop Blues. Oops, not Shop Clues, Blues. Yep, still there. It's the third one down the list, and actually, you're gonna see it under the header of We're Alive, and it's only got 462 views. That was my animation junior thesis. That was the last thesis that I did. It was really good. My senior thesis was so bad and god awful. I don't want many people to see it. It was one of those spectacular failures, It started We're Alive, but it failed spectacularly where it was.
Well, like I said, failures are good. We learn from them, we grow, and we produce great out of our failures. So
yeah, it was an animation, right? And I did the round robin recording that we did like for We're Alive, but it just didn't sound, or excuse me, it didn't look good, but it sounded great. And so I was like, well, I can just tell a story with just audio, and I have the ability to do it.
And that's the birth of We're Alive, huh?
Yep, that was the birth of We're Alive, from that crappy animation that I didn't do very well. Oh, actually, I take that back. I finished it, and it works, but the animation level looks like it's not great. It's just rushed, and it's really bad. But it's like, okay, it's weird. It's really weird. It's overall the movie's graded like a C- D+ tops, if that. Barely makes coherent sense, but I learned so much about it, both as a storyteller and also as a producer and a creator, because it's like, no, some things just don't work.
Hey, and honestly, from what I got from that little story right there is you learned patience and to slow down.
A little bit. Well, actually, that was not slowed down. That was a 3-year project. No, that was a huge amount of work, and that wasn't, so it wasn't slowing down. It was just almost too much work. That's the thing. Yeah. Like, and that's one of the things when and kind of bowed me out of doing visuals much anymore. Well, at that time being, just because the amount of time that went into doing the amount of level that I wanted to do for animation was impossible, especially at the degree and level that I was able to do it. As an individual. So as a one-man gun, I couldn't step to the plate and do everything in that. And it was kind of like, and it was hard. It was really hard to do. if you don't have a gigantic team behind you in tech. And like I literally like took over my school's render farm. Actually, excuse me. I took over all their computers and built my own render farm out of their classrooms to take over. That I was there running like 24-hour ops for like 2 months straight. Like literally when I graduated, or like the couple days before graduation, I was going to a ceremony where like the dean, so I was up for an award, and my eyes were so red there was no more white left. And I'm like standing up there like teetering because I had been up for like 72 hours until that point.
Ooh.
So it was bad. It was a tough project, and I did get through it. But it made me look at it and be like, okay, what's a more efficient way of telling stories? And really, because I looked at it and I said, okay, I spent 3 years doing 18 to 25 minutes of animation. Let's figure out a better way. Because I want to write more stuff, but I don't want to have to animate it. And it's apparently really hard to get things filmed. So, and that's where, I wanted to do live filming. That route didn't go. And so audio presented itself because of the animation background and said, hey, let's start doing this and start doing it from the ground up. And really one of the reasons why I didn't have inspiration coming from like the radio drama world, to be quite honest. Like that was something that I didn't really parrot or model. I sort of just came from film and said, how can I just do this in audio?
So did you ever listen to the old school Superman radio show?
Oh, yeah. No, I've listened to a lot of those old shows, and I am kind of glad that I didn't have as much influence in my writing by them, because how bad they are at some of their exposition, or how overtly he's got a gun, bang, like overly redundant with too much information of the stuff that you don't even need when you have a more intelligent audience, or you find ways to supplement it with your other senses of sound. And that's where it's like, that's the experimentation field, is like, okay, you have a whole palette of sound. You have an entire, like, I describe it as a sound palette. It's like you have paintbrushes. You can put a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and each different type of sound contributes something different to what your interpretation is going to be. So it's like you have to use all the pieces of the palette to make a colorful sound painting. That's like using music, using silence, using Foley or hard effects. Like each one of them has their own characterization of what they can do for audio that'll sort of tailor your experience and how you're hearing it.
So how many hours have you spent in a studio just listening to different sound effects?
I don't know if I can actually say like how many specific hours for that, because what I do typically is like if I'm editing We're Alive or any project, I'll go through my sound effects library and find what I need for that one. But if I don't have it, then I'll Foley it and things like that. So it's really a different process, but I can say that for this stuff, I definitely have well over 10,000 hours of editing by now. Well over. So it's just, I mean, they talk about expert levels, and I'm like, I feel like expert level at that point because I've been doing it for so damn long. And really how much editing I've done because I used to do a lot of films. I did 2 feature documentaries before. So I've done a lot of visual stuff and editing beforehand. So I had a really good discipline for time and speed, and figuring out how to do that in sound and apply that, and the limitlessness of sound. Because like when I did a lot of sound work for like my documentary productions, and one of them coincidentally was called Eastern State, Living Behind the Wall, which is a documentary about the prison Eastern State in Pennsylvania, which was like one of our first prison systems, and actually inspired a lot of what the Maulers became, and what is like behind bars for certain people, and what really prisoners are like.
So that knowledge that really played a big part in lockdown.
Oh yes. Well, and not only lockdown, but just in the original We're Alive in general, because just the Maulers and Eastern Bay was a combination of Pelican Bay and Eastern State, which was the documentary I did. But in that movie, I would do things like when they're talking about the original incarcerations, I did a lot with the sound work. You could hear people in the background when they're being incarcerated, or guards and stuff when photos are up. Like, I really did a lot to make the sound as dynamic as possible, to make it feel like you're sort of in the space. And that's when I started to really realize what you could do with the subjectivity of sound, because I was adding things that weren't there, that were nothing. But I could create scenes from nothingness, and I was like, this is so interesting. And so that was sort of like one of the first stems I got in sort of building sound and figuring out how to do it in a narrative way. So it's weird how many of the little projects, no matter what I've done in the past, has contributed in some way to really building what storytelling is in sound, and sort of why I still love it and why I love experimenting and still doing more of it.
Nice. I noticed in just the We're Alive story that you throw a lot of subliminal Easter eggs for future parts just in the background, that
Oh, yes.
you have to have good headphones to just hear that little thing, like,
Or they're on the surface and you just don't know what you're paying attention to.
yeah, definitely.
There's a whole bunch of those in Gold Rush that are just like waiting, and they're just like ticking time bombs. I mean, like, when do you actually realize that?
I'll probably find more and more every time I listen to it.
Yeah, they're there, and that's what's going to expand the listenability of that program, because it's a tale of the past, present, and the future. It's a bridge.
Yeah, you threw in little bits of everything, and I love that you brought Puck back. Like, Puck is hands down one of my favorite characters.
I will say that he's sort of retiring after Gold Rush.
Oh. Okay.
It's just it is in his nature. And I, not to spoil too much of him, but he has the ending of Gold Rush. He finally meets somebody who kind of changes the direction of his life at this point.
Yeah, I definitely heard that. So I was so happy for Puck. I was like, oh, Puck.
He finally gets his happiness through all of that, and it will be about damn time, considering all the things he's had to go through.
Yeah, definitely. He's lost a lot of friends along the way, and
he was practically broken by a behemoth.
Yeah, I think he spent the whole last part of the survival story in a bed.
Yep, he was incapacitated. He could do nothing.
Well, he could sit up and shoot. Yeah,
and that was about it. Even that was a stretch for him. He shouldn't have even done that. Which was actually great, because it kind of, because here's the thing. I mean, just logistically, just thinking about it, back to when I did that, one of the reasons why that happened and why he had to get disabled in that way was because in that tower, I wanted no male protagonist to take over the story. It had to be all the female protagonists in Dunbar to take down Scratch, because it was their fight. It was like, I had to orchestrate something where it's like, oh no, let's have the female structure and let them have their arc of like, who's the conflict with Scratch? Peg. That's it. And that's why that took place in Dunbar by itself. And then you get to have Saul and Michael, whose their arc has been with Ink. And they're down there in the tunnel with him.
Yeah, I thought that was the best way to end it, but the way Bert finished off everything, I totally didn't see that coming, but I couldn't think of a better way to do it.
Well, I not to know the how being starved, but Bert would not forget those times. No. I mean, it was your captor. It's a 180 on your captor, and it's like, I will do to you what you did to me, and because you did it to me, it now equals out in the universe in a way. Yep. Will it have repercussions? Who knows?
Yeah, the only thing I could ever see Scratch coming back is if she came back as an infected, that she was opened up like in a construction site or something. They're like, oh, we're gonna dig here. And,
no, she did.
Yeah.
but Bert did kill a family member.
Oh, that is true. That is true. So, and I know the family was like
Or
a whole
did he?
subplot.
Did he kill her or did he not? Because technically he didn't pull the trigger.
True.
So it's like it's a gray area. It's
Yeah.
still a gray area, but their world is very stringent, and who knows how they would interpret that.
See, I always thought you would do a branch off of like We're Alive, the families or something.
Oh, that's being well. Put a couple things. One, the families play a huge part of Descendants.
Okay.
So that's, I mean, the families are like a setup for Descendants in many ways. And also, wait. Oh, we are working on a book. And it's the story of Scratch and Angel, and how they grew up in the families.
Nice, because Scratch had a horrible experience in the families, and her background was just kind of tear jerking, and you're like, oh, I understand why she is such a pain in the ass, but I was like, that doesn't excuse anything that she's doing, and she was that character that you loved to hate. She was the Joffrey of We're Alive.
She was a loose cannon and would do what she needed to do at the time she needed to do it, to gain her own favor.
Yeah, she didn't care who was in front of her. She just got it done. So, and I really, really like that. And I loved the whole subplot of the families and how when you thought you had one of them, you actually had two. I love the fact that the family played a role in lockdown. Like, I honestly, if the families didn't come up in lockdown, I would have been like screaming at my mic, like, are you kidding me? Like, they're in prison. This is where the families are.
No, and it was a huge part of it, because I mean that's where the mystery of them is. The mystery of them is in the jails and prisons. That's where some people don't know. But really, I mean, they've been in the society for so long and no one knows who they are. They've been able to hide. And weirdly enough, the outbreak is where they've been the most exposed, because they're amongst the most survivors.
Yep.
Amongst the family. The family members know how to survive in this world. So a lot of them carried on after the end. And so you do see them around, and they're influential. And I will say, I mean, if you think of it like this, I mean, the story of survival sets up Nicholas's background. Gold Rush sets up Alex's background, and really Lockdown sets up Vera's background.
Yeah, well, that was one thing I definitely wanted to ask you was CJ's daughter Vera. I can't remember the main guy from Lockdown's name. He just ran away from me.
Jeremy or Oliver, however you want to, whichever name you want to give him.
The one thing I wanted to ask you, and I don't know if this is a spoiler, I'll cut it later if you don't want it.
Is he the father?
Is he the father?
That might be a case. There might be a case for that.
Oh, okay. So
I mean, put it like this: if he's the father, what does that mean for Vera?
True, and that was something I was asking at the end of Story of the Survival, and then I heard Lockdown, and I was like, holy crap, what does that mean for Vera? Is she part of the family? Is she it? Am I putting these puzzle pieces together? Don't give me that look.
Well, I mean, if put it like this, according to family rules, blood is tied to family. Yeah. So, if Jeremy is Vera's father, that means Vera actually may have a claim and stake in the family.
Well, yeah, and then does that mean Jeremy's gonna come back? Like, is something gonna happen? Look, I have so many questions, and anything I ask is just gonna get spoilers from here on out. So I'm just gonna stop.
Yeah, well, there are a lot of questions. There are so many questions, and there's so many things that I'm like waiting to pull out for Descendants. Like it's just all the stuff we're talking about is like all in there.
Oh, I'm so excited. I am so excited.
There's a reason why I'm excited to get this story to a close and come and reveal everything and be like, here it all is. The complicated parts has been dealing with the setups and dealing with like putting all the pieces in the right places and getting this show to be dynamic, but yet get all the pieces of the characters that you want to have for their arcs to be complete. It's like it's a huge juggling act of like, oh, make sure you have action, make sure you get a little bit of character development here, make sure you get the right things, and the plot has to make sense, and everything has to go like strategically right in terms of logistics. And
You got to have the right amount of drama with the right amount of action.
yep, and the characters have to line up, and whenever you start a new series, you always have to find the voices too. So
yeah. So there was one thing I know I'm just looking too deep at, and that's with the character.
You never
Ink.
know.
So Ink was when he was human, he was a scientist, and
Correct.
there's one thing every scientist has, and that's an assistant. So what happened to Ink's assistant?
Oh, he worked at a lab, so they were just cogs in a wheel.
Oh.
Yeah, no. So
Okay.
he's not. I mean, he was a. I forgot. Technical title of what he was. I don't run off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Forgive me on that one. But when he did work in the lab, he didn't have any assistants. It was pretty much just them, and just him doing his own thing. And actually, he was a brilliant guy who ended up going south because of what happened to him personally. Like, if you kind of, there's some pieces in the background of his court case and stuff like that, of the murders that he committed and stuff. Basically, the guy snapped and he was going crazy, and he ended up like going to trial after tattooing himself up with every mark he could, and was lucky. He was lucky. But also at the same time, it's one of these, like, all the pieces of the universe came together at this one point in time to make this one being happen.
Yeah. I knew I was possibly reading into his character too much, and at the end of it, I was just sitting here like, okay, they got Ink, but Ink is a scientist, and he continued that science after he was infected, and every scientist needs an assistant. Did he have an infected assistant, or was he creating his assistants in the little ones and the mothers of the little ones and the behemoths? Like, he eventually found out how to control all of these. Like, were those his assistants?
Yeah, the little ones were his soldiers.
Yeah.
They were like, they looked at him like a father, because, and that's how he was able to maintain so much more control of them. Like, that was part of his experiments, were not only how can I make something stronger and better out of this? How can I maintain its control? And that was part of his experiments in lockdown. And he's a scientist, so he's giving the system input, and he's watching the outputs.
Yeah.
He's seeing what's happening with all these things and saying, okay, what's the one thing that I need most of all in order to do what I need to do? Control. And that's when all of a sudden the little ones were more of his control factor.
And I love how Saul's mom pointed that out. She's like, look, you're the reason. She told Michael straight out, you're the reason he's being pushed to these levels. You boarded yourself up in walls. He created behemoths to go through those walls. You beat the behemoths. He created the little ones. Like, you're the reason he's evolving. And that's why we're not seeing this anywhere else in the world. But the way that he tattooed himself and everything, and the reason he went crazy, it's like he got a little inside view of what was about to happen to the earth, and he was like, I have to protect myself. I can't die. I have cancer. Like, all of this stuff is going to happen. I'm freaking out. Kill everyone.
It's weird. His background is like a perfect scenario. It's meant to be. It's meant to be all these things coming together at once to basically cure him and create almost their perfect being for the infection. He's like their perfect alpha, and that's where he goes from there.
Yeah, he definitely intrigued me the most out of everything. Is I wanted to know more and more and more about him, but then I was like, no, he has to have this shroud of darkness that if he knew everything about the bad guy, then he wouldn't be the bad guy. He'd just be like an anti-hero.
Yeah, I mean, he understood the nature of the infection. He really did. He understood that the survivability of them is necessary. Like, he sees humans as a threat to their own survival, and them as a species. It's almost like tribalism.
Nice. Okay. Now it's definitely time to cut this off. And we've been chatting forever, and I feel like I'm taking up way too much of your time.
No, it's been all
So
right.
thank you again, Casey. Again, you can find Casey on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, everything. I'll have everything linked in the show notes. You can find me at CreatorZAnon on Twitter. Seth runs our Facebook, everything. I don't have that info in front of me. He kind of took it with him. But remember, you can find me at CreatorZAnon, creators with a Z, and then everything else. But thank you, Casey, for taking some time out of your holiday week to sit down and chat with us and really give us an inside look of We're Alive and Bronzeville. And I'm definitely going to be checking all that stuff out. And I am sitting on the edge of my seat for everything that's coming up next. So,
Well, thank you. Me too. I'll be honest. I am probably gonna be working on it today. I mean, there's a lot of work to get done. It's a big story, and it's getting there piece by piece.
Well, I'm really glad I was able to inspire a tiny piece of that. So, as a fan, I'm like, yay! So, thank you so much, and I can't appreciate this very much, or I can't express how much I appreciate this. So thank you very, very much.
No problem, James. It's my pleasure. And cheers. And let me know what you think when it comes out.
I will be live tweeting every single episode as I listen to them.
I really want to do we did that back in the day, a live like listen along. I think we might want to do that again in the future.
I will definitely be saving some vacation time from work, because I understand the whole running a podcast, being a full-time parent, and working a 40+ hour job a week. So I definitely,
tough, man, but it works.
I definitely understand it, and I can't appreciate how much work you put into what you do. So thank you very, very much, and definitely have a great holiday.
You too, man. Thank you much.
Yep, thank you.